Congratulations! You were born in Korea. The bad side of Korea. 1970s North Korea, to be exact. You arrive in a two-room apartment in a mid-tier city nobody outside the country has heard of. The walls of your apartment are thin. This was a deliberate choice. Not like you know that right now. After all, you're just a baby. From a young age, you already notice that the coal stove in the corner is the warmest thing in the building. And this is including your parents' love. As you grow up, you also notice the most important belongings in your house are two frames on the best wall. You see your parents clean them every morning before they start their day. And as soon as you can hold a rag, you take over the task. Your mother shows you which cloth to use and how much pressure to use. Gentle. Always gentle. You don't even know who the men are yet. You just know they matter more than all of you combined. Your father leaves before the 7 a.m. siren and returns after the midnight one. Sometimes he brings home a small bag of corn. Sometimes he doesn't. Your mother makes something from whatever is available and calls it dinner. You eat it without complaint, because complaint doesn't exist yet in your vocabulary. It doesn't even exist in your country. By 5, you notice a pattern. A woman comes every few days. Round face, practical shoes. She and your mother drink tea and talk about the neighbors. Who's been seen where and who bought what? At the door, your mother always presses money into her hand. You think it's a loan being repaid. The following spring, you start school. The first half hour of every day is not math or language. It's about your country's messiah, the supreme leader. The teacher reads from a book about the supreme leader's childhood, and you copy the important sentences into your notebook. This is just how mornings work. You don't question it for the same reason you don't question the sirens. By 7, you know the portraits by heart. The older one with the round face, the younger one with the glasses. You know their names before you know the names of your father's parents. You always know the right way to speak about them before you even know how to multiply. The years pass the way they always do in a place like this. Not quickly, not slowly, just steadily. By 8, you know the school routine the way you know breathing. The first half hour belongs to the leader, his childhood, his wisdom, his sacrifices. You now copy the important sentences without being asked. 2 of your 7 daily classes are devoted entirely to the Kim family history. Your ideological grade sits at the top of your report card, above mathematics, above language. You learn quickly that this is the one you cannot afford to fail. This is also where you first hear the word juche. The teacher explains it carefully, the way teachers explain things they themselves were taught to believe completely. Juche means self-reliance. It means the Korean people are the masters of their own destiny, guided by the wisdom of the supreme leader. It is the philosophy the nation was built on, the answer to every question about why things are the way they are. You write it down. You memorize the definition. You recite it back without error. What the teacher doesn't say, what nobody says, is that it is the same religion you practice at home. The unintentional prayer to Kim Tu-sung, where God would sit. The forgiveness you always ask for his son who sits below him. Or that devotion is not optional and doubt is not permitted. Years pass and you turn 13. The sessions begin. Every week. Same room, same format. You stand, you quote a Kim, you confess a shortcoming. Not studying hard enough, not demonstrating sufficient revolutionary spirit. Then you sit. Your classmates do the same. Everyone confesses something small. Everyone criticizes someone else for something equally small. The teacher writes everything down. Most of your classmates treat it like cleaning the portraits. Necessary, routine, essentially meaningless. But not you. To you, the posters on the walls are not meaningless. To you, they're heroes of the revolution. One afternoon, the teacher describes the Iminbon system, neighborhood units, community protection, a leader who visits households, maintains order, and ensures everyone is living correctly. You stop writing mid-sentence. Someone flashes through your mind. Round face, practical shoes, tea with your mother every few days. You think about the money pressed into her hand at the door. You always assumed it was a loan. Sitting in that classroom, something shifts quietly in your chest. It wasn't a loan. You don't fully understand what it was yet, but you understand enough to know your mother has been paying for something, and that the woman has been deciding whether it's worth accepting. You walk home that afternoon and look at your mother differently. She's at the stove, making something from corn and yesterday's vegetables. She doesn't notice you watching. You don't ask her about it. Some things you learn to file away and carry alone. That night, your father comes home and sits at the table without eating. He says something under his breath that you don't catch. Immediately, your mother looks at the wall. Then she looks at you. Then she changes the subject. For some reason, you file that away without knowing why. 3 years pass, and you become someone your younger self would recognize, but not quite understand. You are 16 and serious in a way most boys your age aren't. You study your ideological texts the way other boys study smuggled things. When your classmates drift through the weekly sessions on autopilot, mouthing confessions they've rehearsed since they were 13, you mean yours. You quote the Kim passages without checking your notes. Your teacher notices. He says your name during class sometimes, not as a warning, but as an example. You know why you're like this. You've known since that afternoon 3 years ago when the word Iminban clicked into place in your chest like a key. Your mother has been paying someone to look away from the portrait dust, from your father's muttering, and from whatever else the woman has cataloged over the years. Which means your family has been performing loyalty with a crack running through it. You've decided the crack stops with you. Outside the sessions in the classrooms, life moves at the pace life here always moves. Slowly. After school, you help carry coal up 4 flights because the elevator hasn't worked since before you were born. On Sundays, the neighborhood gathers for the weekly cleaning of public spaces. You sweep your section thoroughly. You also always volunteer for the harder corner. Your friend Sung Jin thinks this is funny. He walks home with you most days, laughing at things you're not sure should be laughed at. He's not a bad person. He's just careless in the way that boys who haven't been frightened yet tend to be. One afternoon, he pulls you behind the school building and produces a CD from inside his jacket like it's nothing. South Korean drama, he says. Just one episode that nobody will know. You watch it at his house while his parents are working. The screen is small, and the sound is turned low enough that it's almost a whisper. At that moment, something happens. Not conversion, not ideology collapsing, just recognition. The people on screen are arguing about money and love and small daily humiliations. They are laughing at things that are genuinely funny. They are crying about things that are genuinely sad. They are ordinary in a way that the films you've seen your whole life never allowed anyone to be. You walk home and don't speak to anyone. For 4 days, you are 2 people. The boy who watched the screen and the boy who has spent 3 years deciding the crack stops with him. On the 5th day, you go to the Iminban leader. She listens without interrupting. When you finish, she is quiet for a moment. And then she tells you that you did the right thing, that loyalty like yours doesn't go unnoticed, that there is a path upward in this country for people who demonstrate genuine devotion to the leader. Then she explains what upward means. She explains to you that everyone in the country is classified, not by wealth or talent, but by loyalty. The loyalty of your family going back to before you were born. There are 3 classes. The core class sits at the top, about a quarter of the population. These are the families whose blood runs red with revolutionary commitment. They live in Pyongyang, or the better cities. They attend the real universities. They eat white rice and get assigned to party positions and military ranks that carry actual weight. Their children grow up with futures that were chosen rather than assigned. Below them is the wavering class, the middle, your family. Most families, compliant enough to be useful, uncertain enough to be watched. You work the factories and the technical jobs. You eat corn rice and call it enough. Your ceiling is set before you're born and reinforced every day you remain unremarkable. Below that is the hostile class, the bottom, descendants of the wrong grandparents, landowners, religious people, and those who sided incorrectly during the war. They get the remote provinces, the dangerous work, and the thinnest rations. They don't get to forget what their bloodline cost them. Neither does anyone around them. She looks at you steadily. Devotion to the leader, she says, is one of the very few things that can move a family upward. You walk home thinking about white rice in Pyongyang apartments. 1 week later, Sung Jin is taken away. You tell yourself he'll be corrected, that he'll come back better, that you did what a true friend would do. You tell yourself this for a long time, and for an even longer time. He doesn't come back. After high school, you go to college. You know what it means before the acceptance letter finishes drying. A technical school. Your wavering class ceiling is doing exactly what ceilings do. The technical university is 3 hours from home by train. Not the core universities in Pyongyang with the real libraries and party recruiters prowling the corridors. You unpack your single bag and tell yourself it doesn't matter. That the path the Inminbon leader described doesn't care which building you study in. Within 2 weeks, she finds you. Not the same woman, a different one. Same practical shoes, same economy of expression. The regime has noticed your record, she says. It has expectations, and expectations require demonstration. So, you demonstrate. You become quiet and watchful in a way that looks like studiousness. South Korean slang overheard in the dormitory after lights out. A suspicious phone glimpses in a jacket pocket during morning assembly. Someone laughing at a joke that could only have come from outside. You report everything with the precision of someone who has convinced himself he is a filter rather than a trap. Then someone mentions a Christian gathering. Secret. Weekly. You go once out of the same curiosity that gets most people in this country eventually killed. What you find disgusts you. They are praying to something that has nothing to do with the leader, importing foreign mythology and mixing it with Korean soil like it belongs there. You report them before the week is out. The arrests come within days, and the promises of upward mobility come the day after. Core class. Almost there. Keep going. Years pass exactly like this. Report, promise, report, promise. And you keep going, because that is the only thing you look forward to in your life. You graduate at 22. After graduation, you come home the same way the train does, on schedule, without ceremony. Your mother cries briefly at the door. Your father shakes your hand the way men do when they've forgotten how to say the thing they actually mean. He looks older now. The factory has been collecting years from him in the way the wages never compensated for. You eat dinner together, and the conversation stays inside safe borders. The next month, you get assigned to state administrative work, wavering class occupation, same city, same ceiling. You tell yourself it's temporary. Months later, you see Sung Jin. He's crossing the market square, and the crowd parts for him in a specific way. Hostile class way. You've learned that hostile class carries its own gravity. You can see the years of it on his face, the way the system has pressed him incrementally downward until down becomes his permanent direction. He sees you. He smiles. He even thanks you for showing him the correct path. You would believe him if his eyes said anything close to what his mouth was saying. What you actually see is pure hatred. After that encounter, you become very good at taking different routes home. The years move the way years do when you're busy. At 27, you meet a woman at a neighborhood function. Practical, clear-eyed, the kind of person who understands how the world works without needing it explained. You marry the following spring. You take your wedding photograph in front of the leader's statue because that's where wedding photographs get taken. 18 months later, your daughter arrives. She's small, loud, and completely indifferent to the portraits on the wall. By 32, you're appointed local Inmanbon leader. You also tell your wife everything, the reports, the network, and the promise that has been renewed so many times it has started to feel like furniture. Core class, you tell her. For her, for your daughter, so she can study at a real university someday. Your wife listens carefully. She doesn't say much. She's always been smarter than she lets on. What you don't tell her is that the role comes with an arithmetic nobody explains. Report too little, and the ministry above you starts wondering where your loyalty went. Report too much, and the neighborhood stops talking when you approach, stops inviting you to things, and stops being human in your presence. You walk a line so narrow, it has no name. Due to this, your neighbors learn to greet you with a specific warmth. Not cold enough to be suspicious, not genuine enough to be dangerous. You recognize it because you invented it. You've been reading the calculation on faces for years. What you didn't expect was reading it on your parents' faces too, or your wife's. You tell yourself it's the role, not you. That when the core class comes through, when the ceiling finally lifts, things will be different. People will see you clearly then. During one of your rounds one evening, you pass your neighbor's window and hear a ringtone. Not a state ringtone. Something foreign. A melody with a particular brightness that you have learned over years has nothing to do with the regime. You file the report before you reach your own front door. He's arrested within 48 hours, leaving his house quiet and empty. You go in 3 days later. You tell yourself that it's procedure. But you move with the thoroughness and trained habit of someone who is desperate for credit. You move through the rooms methodically. You knock the floorboards one after the other. One sounds different. A hollow space. Beneath the floorboard, you find a phone. You turn it on. The interface is foreign. The browser is open. You tell yourself you're checking for evidence. And so you sit down on your neighbor's floor, and you check for evidence for a very long time. South Korea loads on the screen. You see more food than you've seen in your entire life stacked casually on supermarket shelves. Nobody is guarding. Hospitals with equipment that works. People standing in public squares shouting criticisms of the government. Their names attached, their faces visible. And then going home afterward to their families. At home, you continue your search in the toilet. You search for juche the way you'd approach something you've always assumed was solid ground. What comes back hollows you out slowly over several nights. Kim Tu-sung was raised Presbyterian. His grandfather was a pastor. The eternal presidency, the trinity of the Kim family, all plagiarized. You built your life inside a copy of the thing you reported people for believing. Then you search for Inmanbon informant promotions to the core class. You sit with what you find for a long time. The promises were never a ladder. They were a leash with enough length to make you forget it was attached. You go home and look at your wife differently. She asks what's wrong. You tell her everything. She's your wife, you tell yourself. She's safe. 2 days later, you hear a knock. You open it and see men. 4 of them. Efficient. Unsurprised. They move through your apartment the way you've moved through other people's apartments for years. Methodically. Without apology. Touching everything. They find the phone in 11 minutes. You look around the room trying to understand how. Who knew? How they knew. Your eyes move across the walls, the portraits, the window. And then they find your wife's face and stop. She's holding your daughter against her chest. Your daughter is 4 years old and doesn't understand what is happening. Your wife understands completely. She tells you she had to. That you were changing in ways she could see and couldn't stop. That she couldn't let your daughter inherit what you were becoming. That she did it for her. That you of all people should understand doing something terrible for someone you love. You do understand. And that's the part that finishes you. The men take you through the neighborhood you watched for a decade, past the doors you knocked on, past the windows you listened at, past the empty house next door where everything began. Nobody meets your eyes. The execution is public, which you also knew it would be. A square, a post, a small crowd assembled by requirement rather than interest. The official reads the charges in a voice designed for projection rather than meaning. You think about Sung Jin's eyes, the hatred dressed as gratitude. You finally understand what he was actually saying. Then you stop thinking. But that isn't the end. Despite her sacrifice, your wife and daughter are demoted to hostile class. Now your daughter cleans the portraits twice as carefully as you ever did. She also confesses twice as earnestly at the weekly sessions. She will spend her entire life trying to climb back up a ladder that was pulled up the moment you fell. And like you, she'll sacrifice multiple friends and neighbors to get back to where she believes she truly belongs.